Hello students, in today's session we will discuss unit number 4, which is design of beams. Before going ahead with this unit, I want you to revise the first 3 units which we finished. First unit is about tension member. Then second one is about compression member, and third one where we have seen beam column sections. Okay, so in the tension member we understood how to design a tie members. Tie members are provided into the roof truss combinedly with the help of trusses, with the help of strut and tie members we form a truss, right? And how to design the tie members was we learn into the first unit. Also we have understood modes of failure, and we have checked the different modes of failure for the different number of sections, right? Now in the second unit we come to the compression member, and where we have understood designing of columns, how to design a column, and how to design when it is axially loaded, how to design when it is loaded with some extra movement due to the eccentrical loading. If there is a development of movement, in that case what we will do, how we will design it, that part is covered into the third unit, where we understood what is beam column. What is beam column? The member in which along with the axial forces there is a movement, the section is subjecting to the axial force as well as movement, then that kind of a members are designed as a beam column. So let's go to the fourth unit now. Now remaining part which is out of our syllabus is designing of beams. Then we will move towards the designing of roof truss. Before that we have different types of beams. One is called as a girder, and you have must observe these girder types of a beam in the flyovers, and you have habitual to this term, you have listened, heard this term many times. So in this fifth unit we will understand how to design a girder. Then along with this one more important topic remain is how to provide a beam to column connection, and how connections are provided at the junction point of a beam and column. That we will also understand in the fifth unit. Okay, so remaining part is what? Designing of girder, then beam column connections and roof truss. Let's start with the fourth unit now. So here you can see that I have mentioned the definition of beam, and definition of beam says that beam are the structural members. See here, beams are the structural members that supported loads which are applied transferred to their longitudinal axis. What they said, the loading is transferred to the longitudinal axis. Now this is new. How it is new to us? See here. If I draw a beam for you like this, and if you observe the loading on this kind of a member, the loading will be not along the axis. Loading will not be along the axis. Where will be the loading then? The loading will be on this plane. Loading will be on this hashed region. Okay, now why we are providing loading onto the transverse region or transfer plane? Why it is called transfer, and how we providing loading on that edge, that I'm gonna discuss now. See, the arrow, the line is telling us what is the axis of that member. The axis, longitudinal axis, is somewhere passing through the middle of that beam in the horizontal direction, but the load is not transferred through this or not applied on this longitudinal axis. If the load is in this direction, in this which is pulling out our fibers of our member, then that kind of a force is called as a tension member, and we understood how to design a tension member. Then if the forces at this ends are like this, which is compression, then we also understood how to design a compression member from the second unit. Now the question is, why beam is different and how it differs from other member. So in the beam, the loading is never transferred or applied along the axis, but it is applied what? To the perpendicular surface, on the perpendicular surface of the, from the neutral axis or from the central axis. What is the plane which is perpendicular to it? On that plane we apply a loading, and that plane is called as a transverse plane or transfer direction. Okay, and it is, this transfer plane is what? Is transferred to the longitudinal axis. It is transferred to the longitudinal axis. Simply you can say that it is the plane not passing through the central axis, but it is transferred to it. It can be found perpendicular from the longitudinal axis. Now they assume to be, now they said we assume that beam members are placed horizontally and subjected to the vertical loads. We have seen in the houses in our, where we live in our residence, we have seen that there are columns and there are beam. Columns are the vertical members. Generally everyone, even the one who has not a civil engineering student, is also understand that the vertical members of your structure is called as a column and the horizontal ones are called as a beam. Now the beam is subjected to the vertical loading, not along the axis but on the transverse direction. That's what here said, subjected to vertical loading. But on which axis? It is the plane which is transferred to the longitudinal axis. It is the plane which is transferred to the longitudinal axis. Now the load transfer by beam is primarily by bending. See, when we say the column is under the compression, what it means? The load transfer is means by a compression action. When I say the member is in tension, then I must say that the load transfer takes place by the action of tensioning, right? Now here in this kind of a member where I am discussing beam or a horizontal member of your structure, the load is primarily transferred by what? Bending. So here we are not talking about compression, we are not talking about the tension, but here the new term arrives which is called as a bending, and the beam primarily transfer the load by means of bending. Okay, now any structural member could be considered as a beam. Even I have underlined that because I want you to keep it as a note, that any member of your structure, it must not be always in horizontal position, but any member which transfer the load in the form of or in the way of bending, or we can read the sentence written over here. Any member could be considered as a beam if the load caused bending of the member. If the load applied on that member is causing bending, that member is getting bent, then that kind of a member is called as a definitely a beam member. It can be in a horizontal position, or it can be in a tilted position, or it can be in a vertical direction. No matter, it doesn't matter, but what you have to discuss or what you have to focus upon is the load transfer action, how the load is transforming. If the load is transforming by the action of bending, then that kind of a member must be taken as a beam member. Okay, now on the same note, if you remember, in the third unit we understood beam column concept, and there I have said you that any member which is carry a load in the transverse direction, and we called it as a beam. What I said, any member which is horizontal in position but transfers the load on its transverse direction or on a transfer plane, but if it is subjected to point load on its transverse plane, it is not uniformly distributed load, but you come across a point load. Let me draw for you. If I say this is the beam, and this beam is carrying uniformly distributed load all over its transverse direction, alright, but somewhere due to some region there is a point load acting upon your beam. That point load causes our section to extra moment, bend down and causes a extra moment. Then that beam never remains beam only. We define it as a beam column. Similar something about it I wrote over here. If a substantial amount of axial load is also present, the member is referred to as a beam column. What does it mean? It means that any member which is subjecting to the bending action, adding with that if it is subjecting sufficient amount of axial load. What I said, any member which is subjected to the bending action plus axial loading, then that kind of a member is called as a beam column, Now coming ahead, what next is said, if we consider a normal building frame, the beams, now I am considering what? A normal building frame. Now for this you have a background, like we have two types of structures. One is the load bearing structure, second one is the frame structure, right? In the frame structures, I am talking about such a frame structure, one normal building which is constructed out of frame structure. In that normal building, the beams that span between adjacent columns are called main or primary beams. Now I am discussing types of beams. Basically the types of beams are this which I am talking about. Primary beam is based upon the place and how it is placed on the column. Where does it place on the slab? Is it spanning on the two columns? How it is spanning? On that basis, you consider your beams, you classify your beams into the categories, and those categories are called as a primary beams and secondary beams. Here, primary beams and secondary beams. How does our beam is spanning and how does it placed on the column? On that basis, our beams are classified in the primary and secondary beams. Let's understand that. So I said, if you have a structure like this, a simple frame structure, okay, I have to draw it nicely to make you understand. Okay, so you have structure like this. You also have a column here. Okay, now you have a structure like this. In this frame structure, you can see this is the column at four edges. You have column, right? Now what is this horizontal members are? These horizontal members are called as a beam, correct? Now these beams are classified. How it is spanning over the structure. So see, this beam is spanning between the two columns, column number A and column number or column name as a B. Okay. Also this four edge beams are spanning between what? Column to column. Okay. But these two middle beams, this one and this one. It is not rest on the columns. They are not rest at the junction on the column. No, they are rest on the beam. They are rest on this beam. So the columns, see here, we consider a normal building frame and the beams that span between adjacent columns. It means that there are two columns, one column at one end, second column is second end, and you rested one beam above it. Then this beam is called as a primary beam. But if the beam is transfer the load, if that transfer the floor loading to the main beams, it means that this middle beams, okay, this middle beams are transforming the floor load to the main beams. Main beams are this four edge beams, right? And this middle, which is making a plus sign, those two beams are secondary beams because they have not rest onto the column. They are now spanning between the adjacent column, but they are supported by the primary beams and they transfer the slab loading on the main beams. Okay, so that's what the difference between primary beams and secondary beams. Now second is, the beam may be termed as a simply supported beam, continuous beam and fixed beam. How do we classify it? So simply supported beams are basically these three categories: simple beams, continuous beams and fixed beams are classified on the basis of what? End conditions. What I said? End conditions. Now what is end condition? End conditions are said as this. Let's suppose this is the beam and it is simply supported at the end. It is simply supported at the end. Then this end condition, due to this end condition of that beam, the beam is classified as a simple beam. Is classified as a simple beam. At the simple beam, at the simply support, what is allowed? Rotation is allowed? No. Rotation is restricted. Rotation at the simply ends are restricted, or yes, I must make a better diagram for it. Okay, this is a simply supported beam. One end is roller, one end is hinged. Okay, so there is a mistake. In the beams which is simply supported, one end is roller, second one is hinged. What is allowed? Because see, every support has its own restrictions and own free movements. Okay, so when we say the support is simply supported and the end condition is simply supported, the vertical reaction is develops. Vertical reaction at both the ends develop. Okay, now if I say reaction develop, it means only reaction develops when restriction is provided. Restriction, or it is not allowed to move. Reaction develops in that direction where movement is not allowed, and that's why if I allowed it to move in a vertical direction, will there be any reaction? No. But as we know, at simply support, vertical reaction develops because what? The vertical movement is not allowed. As well as you come across horizontal reactions. At simply support, you come across two reactions, one in vertical direction, other one is in horizontal direction, right? Now if I said there is a reaction, you must understand reactions only develop when we do not allow a movement or we restrain the movement, correct? And therefore we can say in the simply supported beam like this I shown up in the picture, is not allowed to move in horizontal and vertical direction. It is restrained in vertical and horizontal direction. Therefore reaction has been developed. Now there is free rotation allowed. Rotation is allowed. Therefore movement has not developed. Moment is not developed because of what? If we stop the rotation, if we not allow it to rotate, then moment will develop. In the form of reaction, moment will develop. Similarly, such a different end conditions are provided for the beams. In one, we have seen the roller and hinge condition, roller and hinge condition. Then fixed end, both the ends are fixed, and the hinge condition and the hinge condition. So on that basis, our beams are classified. See here, simple beam in which what I said, when the end condition is do not carry any end moments. Why? Because we allowed it to rotate, right, from any continuity developed by connections, right? If there is, we haven't fixed the rotation, we haven't restrained it, therefore rotation is free to rotate, and therefore no end movement. As well as if there is a continuity, due to even that continuous connections, there is no development of moment at the ends, then that kind of a beam is called as a simply supported beam. Next is a second type of our beam is continuous beam. Now in the continuous beam, when it is extends continuous across more than two supports, what I said, if you extended one beam more than two supports, see here, first support, second support, third support, fourth support, it is spanning more than one span and spanning more than two supports, then we called it as a continuous, because it is continuous on more than 1, 2, 3 and 4 columns. It is continuous. The next one is fixed beam. What is fixed beam? It's a beam in which ends are rigid. They are so rigid that it doesn't allow any horizontal movement, not even a vertical movement, even rotation is restrained. And due to that, what I said, the beam has its ends rigid connected to the other members so that the moment can carried across the connections. Due to restrained conditions, there is a development of what? Reactions in horizontal, vertical and in rotary direction. Moment is also developed. Okay. Now this is how the beams are classified on the basis of its end conditions. Next is, what is the load coming upon our beam and how the load is transferred. While considering loading on our beam, we should understand that loadings are of different types, which we learned in the very first unit. Loadings are wind loading, then second one is your self weight or dead load. Actually, dead load is the load which is applied on our structure due to the furniture and the things which are in the rest condition, right, which is not movable, whereas a live load is the load which is applied by the objects which keeps moving on our floor, right. That is what called live load. Second load is the dead load. In the dead load, we categorized it, and one load out of it is the self weight, the beam which is spanned for the long spans, and it carries a heavy dimensions. In that case, due to its own weight, there is a heavy load transferred. Okay, that own weight of that beam is also included, and that's what's said over here. The beam section should be checked for adequacy for the applied loads. Applied load means what? The live load, dead load which is coming upon our section, those are the applied externally. But it also include what? It should include the beam weight. It should include the beam weight, because one beam which is spanning on the long spans and carry its own great dimensions and weight at that time, we should also include that weight into dead load. Understood? That is very important. Next, I said for the usual structural frame, which means that frame structure of a steel building, bending effects are predominant in the beams with negligible torsional effect. So better I make you understand this like this. Beams are always designed for the bendings, and bending is the predominant action which has to be taken care of, where the shear and the other things like shear and torsion, where the collapse mechanism happens. In the collapse thing, we get what are the different collapse mechanism. It can be collapse due to bending, due to compression, due to tension, torsion, shear, right? These are they both. This everything is happening over or within one member, but one which is predominant is taken care of by designing. Okay, and rest of all this mechanism are checked for the safety. What I said, there are many things going within our section. What are those things? Tension, compression, then secondary part is shear, torsion, buckling. This many things are occurring within our member, but we have to check that which one is the predominant, which one is carry the heavy effect, highest effect on our member, and that heavy effect or that predominant collapse mechanism will be taken care while designing that section, and rest of the collapse mechanisms are checked for the safety. So in the beams, the main thing which may collapse our beam, or due to which our section may get fail is the bending action, and that is predominant in our beam sections, and other things are negligible. Sometimes we have to also take care of them, but we will check for the safety for those rest things. Next, I said in order to resist, see here, in order to resist the bending effects in the most of the bending effects in the most optimum way. Okay, now I want to tackle this bending effects. Then which will be the optimum way, which will be the effective way? So it will be in the most optimum way. How we will do that? Much of the material in a beam has to be placed away from the neutral axis. What I say? In order to resist the bending effects in the most of optimum way, much of the material, see here now, this is your beam cross section. Let's take a beam cross section, and sorry, this is your beam actually, 2D diagram of a beam. In this beam you have a neutral axis. Where do we have a neutral axis? See here, this is your beam and this is your cross section of beam, and we have a in the cross section we come across a neutral axis, right? And this neutral axis differ our compression stresses from the tensile stresses or tensile force, right? Now this neutral axis, what said here, place as much of the material away from the neutral axis. It means that whatever material you have to load in on that beam should be away from the at the edges of that beam, away from the neutral axis, away from the neutral axis. And why we need to do this? Because in order to resist the moment coming upon bending moment effect taking place in the beam, that is tackle or that will be resolved by which way? If we gather or if we place all the loads or all the material away from the neutral axis. Okay, now next I said beams are designed for maximum bending moment and checked for the maximum shear force. What I said, design for bending moment and check for shear force. What I said, design for maximum bending moment and check for maximum shear force. As well as there are other things. Other things are what? For which we have to check is the local effects such as a vertical buckling, crippling of waves and deflection. These are the secondary things, secondary effects that also need to be taken care of, but we will not design for it, but we will check for the adequacy, we will check for the safety. Okay. Now when I said the beam is designed for the bending, right? So how many types of bending come across our section? So this bendings also has its classification or its type that we will understand now. The simple bending, it takes place if the loading plane, see here, I am reading from here, simple bending. Wait a minute, yes. Generally a beam may be subjected to simple, yes. Generally beam may be subjected to simple, unsymmetrical or biaxial bending. Okay, so what is simple bending, what is unsymmetrical bending, or what is biaxial bending, that we gonna understand here. See here, simple bending, it takes place if the loading plane coincide with one of the principal plane of the doubly symmetric section. What they said, it takes place if the loading plane coincides. What should be coincide? Whatever loading plane of your beam is need to be on the this beam you have applied the loading, right? And that need to be coincide with what? The principal planes. Let's suppose I have used I section as a beam like this, okay, and this I section I have applied a loading, okay, and that loading, the plane of that loading need to be coincide with one of the principal plane of a doubly symmetric. What is doubly symmetric? See here, if I take a x axis, this upper part and lower part is symmetrical. Even if I cut this section in y axis, this left hand side and right hand side is symmetrical. So loading plane and one of the plane of your doubly symmetric section has to be coincide, and then only simple bending will occur. What if my section is open, kind of like C section? If I take a channel sections, in that case channel sections, if you want a simple bending, whatever loading you have applied on this section need to be what? It is need to be one plane of this, loading plane of this section need to be coincide with shear center. See here, if I take a singly symmetrical open section, singly symmetrical means what? This is the section in which in the y direction, if I cut the section on the left hand side and right hand side, things are not symmetrical. But if I cut this section in x direction, then all the upper and below sections, part of section is symmetrical. In this, and this section is open from one end, so I said symmetrical open section, which I named C section or channel section. The loading passes through shear center and is parallel to the principal axis plane. So principal axis plane and shear center should be coincide. In that case only that section will give a simple bending. Now what is shear center? So shear center concept is a, if I said this is a C section, shear center lies somewhere, wait a minute, if I place if I used a open C section or symmetrical, singly symmetrical C section, and if I used it as a column, or if I used it as a beam, then I must understand this loading applied, or loading we have applied on this section need to be passed through shear center. And now shear center is the center of this C channel, where if we apply the loading, there will not be a torsion occur on our section. If I place somewhere here like loading, if I place randomly anywhere, then torsion will occur in the singly symmetric sections. And to avoid this torsion, we need to pass our loading, we need to pass this center of loading through one center called a shear center. A shear center is a center where we apply a loading, then torsion is neglected, torsion will not be experienced by that section. Okay. Now what is unsymmetrical bending? Unsymmetrical bending is it occurs if the plane of loading does not pass through the shear center. If I used a C channel and there is a shear center of C channel, shear center mostly falls out of the singly symmetrical sections, and if I assumed it is here, then this is a C section, and if there is a shear center, it is actually on this side, and if I said the load is not passing through this shear center, then that member will subject bending, which is unsymmetrical. If the load is passing through the shear center, then no issue, the simple bending will take place. But if the loading is not passing through the shear center, then it will called as a unsymmetrical bending. It will cause, is coupled with what? Bending will coupled with torsion. As I said, if we don't pass the loading through shear center, torsion will takes place. So bending along with the torsion, what will takes place? Bending moment as well as torsion. But here in the first case, only the bending action or bending movement takes place. Okay. Next, last one is a axial bending. In the axial bending, what happens? If the simple bending takes place about both the principal planes without torsion, what I am saying? In the first case, simple bending is taking place only when the plane of a loading is coincide with one of the principal axis. But here plane of loading is matched or coincide with both of the principal axis of that section and without torsion, then the beam is said to undergo biaxial bending. And if I have to give an example for it, the purling beams in a roof truss carries the biaxial bending. You will understand it while designing the roof truss. We will understand detail analysis. We will do detail analysis of purlin beam, and we will design even the purlin beam in the roof truss. For that, you keep in mind that purlin beams are carry biaxial bending. Now last part is here. As far as the design is concerned, the depth of a beam is a very important parameter. Why depth of a beam is very important parameter? Because moment of resistance is depends upon force into lever arm. What is force into lever arm? Force, let's suppose this is your I section. This I section carries the stresses. I section is used as a beam and carrying a forces about it. Okay, one tensile force. If I said this I section beam is simply supported. Okay, then in the simply supported beam will bend like this. Compression is at top, tension is at bottom. I said this is the compressive force and this is the tensile force, and this middle axis is the neutral axis, which is separating compressive forces from tensile force. In this I beam, which is simply supported, if I said this beam carries importance to its depth. How? Because the distance between tensile force to the compressive force is called as a lever arm, and that distance tells us the moment of resistance. Tells about what? Moment of resistance. How much load will be resisted by the section is depends upon moment of resistance. And how do we calculate that? It will be force into lever arm. And what is lever arm? The distance between the compressive and tensile force. If that distance is wider, the depth of beam is more, this distance will be more. If this distance will be more, moment of resistance will be more. Therefore, what I said, the depth of beam is very important parameter, while a large depth is desirable for moment resistance. It is desirable, we use that to give a greater moment of resistance. The resulting thin web, but due to taking the larger depth, what it result into, the web may not be able to resist the lateral or web buckling. What it means, even if we increase the web height or a depth of a I section beam, it will be good to resist the it will give us a great moment of resistance, but at the same time it will result into what, incapable to resist the lateral loading, or it may result into the web buckling due to as we seen into the long column buckles down due to its slenderness ratio or slender behavior, right? Similar things will happen here. If we increase one dimension irrespective of the thickness, then what it will end up as a slender and may result into the buckling. So this is what the few concepts and fundamental things regarding the beam designing. Hereafter we will go for little more theory is remaining, and once we finish our theory part, we will move to design the beams. Thank you so much.